Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we look at the brand new documentary Haunters, The Art of the Scare, directed by Jon Schnitzer. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the upcoming Young Captain Nemo series from Fievel and Friends, Macmillan Books. With me from Austin, second week back from Fantastic Fest, is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth Studios, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony, because tonight we are actually doing a movie that you have brought back with you.
Howdy. Yeah, I'm excited.
Howdy. I am too. Honestly, I think this is going to be a fun one to discuss. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Hello.
Hello. Also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. She's also a member of the improv a cappella vocal group In Harmony's Way. Say hello, Julia.
You know, I love Austin, but I am glad to be in Denver now. It's
Yes.
pretty here.
All right, so I'm making a note. All right, okay. Haunters is a documentary about how family-friendly haunted houses for Halloween have spawned a growing subculture of extreme horror simulation. What kind of person dedicates their life to turning other people's nightmares into reality? And how far is too far? The documentary looks at three people, really. It has a lot of people in it, but it's got three people. Shar Meyer, legendary scare actor, Donald Juleson, and he is what they call boo scare, a traditional haunted house maze designer. Boo scare meaning it's the thing where you go through and things jump out and go boo and you're scared. And against them, or sort of on the other side of the continuum from them, the infamous Russ McKamey, as he creates the most controversial full contact haunt of all time in his own backyard. So let's go in the same order we went last week, because Tony, this is one that you have essentially brought back from Fantastic Fest. It is available on VOD. So let's get our opening thoughts. Let's go Tony, Drew, Julia. I'm putting you after Drew because I think you're going to have a lot to say, and I want you to respond to these guys. And then I may not even have anything. You may cover everything. So Tony, Drew, Julia, and then I'll go. Tony, take it away.
I was really happy to bring this back. I unfortunately didn't see it at Fantastic Fest. That's the problem with seeing like 40 films. Like you arrange your schedule and you kind of make choices along the way as to, I kind of want to see this, and this may not ever show in the country again, and that kind of thing. And I was unable to make a press screening, so I really wanted to do this one because everybody there said you have to see Haunters. And then talking to director Jon, online, he is super excited for his movie to be out and a really great guy, and everybody said good things. So I was really stoked. And it's a really interesting subject. We've had haunted house documentaries before, but one that concentrates on the actors and the creators is really interesting. So I was really stoked, and I was not disappointed. It's a really cool thing, especially, right at Halloween season. So
Yeah, it does befit the season, that's for sure. Drew, so what are your thoughts about this one?
Well, this actually hit home with me on a lot of levels because the first year I lived in Austin, I actually was a scare actor at House of Torment, which is now the top-rated haunted house in the entire country.
No
So,
kidding.
like, listening to the people talking about, like, creating the props and, like, the scare actor stuff and everything, like, that brought back a lot of memories, and I probably pepper that throughout the rest of the podcast because I think there's definitely a lot of things that rang true to me. House of Torment is kind of in between being a boo haunt and an extreme haunt. You aren't allowed to touch anybody, and that's certainly something I will comment on again. But all that stuff, it was fascinating to hear other people talk about it, having actually lived through that experience, even though it was just for one October. I'm not still doing it the way the people who are in this documentary are doing it. I I am a little curious as to how our online fans will react to this, because this is definitely not a horror movie. This is a documentary, even though I would argue it's horror adjacent and of interest to people who like horror movies. But it seems like anytime we kind of veer in that direction, we get some static. So I'll be curious to see if that happens with this. But I thought this was a fascinating film, and well done, and again, perfect for October.
Outstanding. Julia, so you watched this documentary with me last night. So what are your opening thoughts?
I do think it fits in with our horror theme for the reasons mentioned, and also because I'm actually quite terrified of the guy, of Russ. I actually find him as scary as many of the monsters that we've seen.
Who's really briefly, who's Russ in this one?
So Russ is the owner of this haunt that comes up at his home every year, and it's like Drew was just saying about how they didn't touch anybody. This one, they actually do bring your worst fears to life by waterboarding you and push, and like it's grabbing you and pulling you through things and covering your face. Like, it's just a lot of really dangerous physical stuff. And there's what they mentioned was that a lot of these places, all of the places, in fact, except for this one, it seems, have safe words so that if you are done, you don't want this anymore, you can stop it. But he doesn't have that. And so he continues to torture these people even after they've decided, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? And something came to mind, and this is actually going to be my endorsement, is the book that this comes from. But there's a therapist that I read a book by her, and she says, she talks about the difference between a narcissist, a sociopath, and a psychopath by using this metaphor. She says a narcissist will run you over and scold you for being in their way. They will endlessly complain about how you intentionally damaged their car. A sociopath will run you over, scold you for being in their way, and have a smirk because secretly they get entertainment out of the chaos they've created. And a psychopath will go to great lengths and take calculated steps to ensure they run you over, laugh while doing it, and back up to make sure the most damage is done. And I think that is Russ. I think he's a complete psychopath. And the rest of the piece, I just thought was a really neat, interesting picture of how people bring these experiences to life. But with this guy, I really felt like they were showing us just a very dark side of humanity. I'm really eager to talk about it.
Maybe we'll talk more about it, but the difference between a person who enjoys scaring people, like the actor Shar, versus when you see Russ editing his films.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That man is, in my opinion, I guess for legal reasons.
Yeah, none of us are psychiatrists, but just assume a big alleged here. Yeah. Go ahead.
I found his looks to be what I would associate in my mind with a sadist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest difference in watching him enjoy and edit those films and the way he approaches things is completely different than anyone else in the film, and I think that's dangerous myself.
Mm-hmm.
I also was very horrified that he doesn't pay his employees, because having worked as a scare actor, I can tell you here and now that is the most physically demanding thing I have ever done in my entire life. And the fact that he is not paying them.
Well, he's not charging either.
Yeah. Well, that to me, it's like, well, that's not a job. This isn't a job the way, some of the other people they showcase in this. This is some weird, like, surreal thing with him. And that, like, you have some of the other people where it comes from this almost like kind of innocent, let's dress up like a monster and make believe kind of place. And with him, I absolutely believe it comes from this more sadistic, I don't know, he does seem almost like a serial killer, because he's otherwise like this, like, completely bland suburban, could blend in, like he's a wedding singer. He looks kind of like.
Mm-hmm.
So Russ, before we get into, because I really believe that Russ is going. This is the only thing I'll say as an introduction. I really believe that Russ is going to dominate our conversation. And so probably before we get into what he does, we should go ahead and talk about the other two, because there's really only three topics of this documentary. It's Shar, like Tony mentioned. It's Shar, the scare actress who's been at it for a long time. There's the other gentleman, and right now my brain is losing it. Donald. There's Donald, who has his traditional haunt, and then there's Russ. So So we should probably kind of talk about the others in the context of haunted houses. Now, I have one question, and this is going to sound really ignorant. I love documentaries about this kind of thing. By the way, there was one called Halloween on Sixth Street from a couple years ago that was all about how much people really get into preparing their Sixth Street Halloween experience in Austin. That was a fantastic documentary.
Oh,
This one,
there's
go ahead.
also The American Scream,
Yes.
which came out in 2012, and that one's great. I think that's my favorite documentary on this particular subject. No offense to John, it's just
no.
how it's portrayed. I really got into The American Scream, and also American Scream, like Rain could watch it because it didn't have Russ and his crew.
Yeah.
Because straight up, my wife had enough. Once people were being tortured for real,
yeah,
what happens in
And
real
Jason,
life. That was
I
it.
will add that that also don't forget, even though they don't feature the person, the interviews, there's also the blackout. I think it's called the thing with blackout.
That's scary too.
Well, and they talk extensively about Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, and they do have the Blackout guy, and Blackout is another extreme haunt. That's one that Exo Jane did an article a couple years ago about, where you go through and there's all kinds of things that are intended to make you feel like you're going to be sexually assaulted. So you're being chased by a naked person. You're confronted by a woman who asks you to pull out her tampon. I mean, there's just all this like just sort of grody body horror kind of stuff that I don't know. I don't even know exactly how they sculpt that particular experience, but whatever. I got
you
one
had a question.
Well, my question is one of ignorance, which is, when I was growing up, I remember we always called these things haunted houses. Like, hey, the March of Dimes has a haunted house over at the mall, right? But ever since I watched the houses that October built, because I talked to the directors of those for the show a couple of weeks ago, and this movie, everybody says the haunt. There's a haunt down the street. We're putting up a good haunt. And I'm like, when did that become the phrase? Is this one of those things where everybody decided we're going to call it this and we're going to pretend like we never?
Slang.
Is it?
That's industry slang. Having been on the other side of this, that's like basically shorthand. Like anybody who's actually in the haunted house biz, they'll call it a haunt. Like your rubes, your people on the other end, they'll say haunted house. If you actually work in the industry, it's called a haunt.
Okay, I totally believe you. I'm not. And also, I'm well known by my friends for being oblivious and not picking up on things. Having said that, any haunted house, and I worked at a couple haunted houses, but admittedly, it was a long, long, long time ago. I never heard that term. That is. So if it's inside language, it never permeated to the teenagers who were like working. Whatever. That's fine. I'm just saying this is new lingo for me.
I would think that this has become more big business in the last, 10 years or so. Like,
it may well be.
I worked at a haunted house when I was a teenager, and I said like that was not even like working at House of Torment was basically like getting a job in the circus.
Right. So it was a good time. So anyway, okay. So Shaw, the three people. First, let's talk about Shar, because again, this documentary is different from a lot of documentaries that take a sort of very historical tone, and it's not like that at all. It's more intended to give you a feel of where the industry is today by focusing on three people who are involved in it. So Shar is the easiest one to explain because hers is the simplest story, and although she's delightful, if there were if it were nothing but people like Shar, this might not be all that interesting a documentary, because she's just a sweet lady who really loves putting on insane makeup and getting involved in the booze.
I think it would be an interesting documentary, and I wish that they would have had a psychologist as one of the experts that they talk to, because her story, to me, is really tragic in that she seems to, it's like a battered woman syndrome. She seems to have this desire to participate in this craft, even if, and almost especially if, she is severely injured. And so she ends up because she'll be punched by people who are, afraid of her. She does this amazing, the makeup they do for her with the prosthetics and everything is incredible. It's like Freddy Krueger level, and so you can't tell that she's female because she even changes her voice and everything. And so she'll come out and people will punch her and choke her. She said at one point 3 guys start strangling her, at another point, a guy pushed her down and just started punching her back, and that he actually really injured her, so that she's now always in pain. And she was in tears as she said it, but with a smile on her face, saying that that she's always in pain, and yet she keeps doing it. So to me, it's like battered woman syndrome, where she feels like this is what she has to do, and I don't know who the husband is in this case, because it's not her spouse is not interested in this stuff. But
no, he's on there.
He's not interested in it. He said he's never been interested. He'd never gone to one of her haunts. What I'm saying is, he's not the one who's demanding this of her. It's the haunt. The haunt itself is like the spouse. It's drawing her in. But it's really tragic. And I think if the story were about people like her, it would still be really compelling to see what is it that makes somebody
like the American Scream documentary that Tony talked about. It is, and like, certainly the people I talk to at House of Torment, there are way more people like her than like Russ. Like Russ is like, like would be like a freak even among freaks. Like she was more like the norm. And like, I don't know, to me, like you say battered woman, to me, I see her almost as like an old boxer or something. Like it's like, because it is really physically demanding to do this. Like, and like certainly her talking about like people getting, it is weird because like these people pay a charge. They know they're going in to get scared, but then they get mad at you when you scare them. And like so that whole bit of her talking about like people like getting physical with her, that's something. I mean, Jamie would tell you, like when I would come home beat up some nights.
Yeah.
And obviously, like she's compelled to do this with something like deep within herself, like it's part of her identity. Like I kind of respect that, even though I get where you're coming from. Like it's certainly taken its toll on her body. You think that she would give up. Like for me, I did the one season and I was kind of like, okay, that was fun. I don't know that I necessarily ever need to do that ever again. But there were people who were like her that just like kept coming back year after year after year after year because they have this deep-seated need to do this.
Well, there's also a matter of the numbers. I mean, like let's say her head and heart's in the right place. She's having a good time scaring people in this sort of safe environment. The traditional rules being you can't touch the patrons. The patrons are supposed to not touch you. But given that thousands and thousands of people are coming through, the odds are somebody's going to break the rules. Some jackass is going to take advantage.
You're human.
Some might do it because they lose control. Some might do it because they lose control and forget that they're in a simulated environment. But some are jackasses and are just going to take advantage.
But I really feel like most of the ones that she's talking about are people who just don't, like, it's just literally the primitive part of them that is taking over, and so you don't, I mean...
So on that note, scariest haunted house I've ever been in.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I've told this story or not before on the show, but was at Toei Movie Village in Japan. They have a haunted house, and there's several factors that make it scary. I've been through enough haunted houses when I was younger, so you're like, oh, dude with the chainsaw, oh no, there's a ghost. You kind of know all the tropes. Not to say that it's still scary, but it's less scary. Let's put it that way. Well, this one in Toei Movie Village is like all like feudal Japan. It's also a little bit closer in. So it's a totally different, like a little bit more claustrophobic. So I didn't know what to expect. And even though I know none of it's real, my heart was racing. So I keep hearing at the end, like girls screaming. So I know there's something at the end of this haunted house, in amongst the like long-haired woman jumping out. And there's all this cool, it was a cool haunted house, like super great. But so at the end, two guys are in front of me, and this zombie samurai pops out, starts coming at us with his sword, and the two guys in front of me just freeze with this like, kind of look on their face. Yeah. And so I know that it's, fake zombie samurai guy. Yeah. But I still want to escape. And it's Japan, so I don't want to get in these people's space, but it took everything I could not to just push them and go, get out. Like, no one wants to get caught by zombie samurai. Yeah. And eventually they got unfrozen and ran out. And then I was, shortly after them. But it's that whole thing of like, it's not real and you want to react it, but the little monkey brain in you goes, this is messed up. Like you have to go escape or punch or whatever, whatever your instincts tell you to do.
And that's the
Right.
traditional Blue Scare haunt, where it's just this exercise in going through a haunted house. There's monsters, there's scenes. Some are more complicated than other, but there are all these guardrails where you're almost going through more like a movie than anything else. You're kind of on rails, even though the rails are your legs. You're walking through, you're seeing scenes, scary stuff happens, and then you run. um, which is fine. By the way, let me ask this before we move on to Donald. So, do you guys do haunted houses anymore? Like, are you going this year? Do you go every year?
I don't very
I
often.
I haven't actually gone in many years. I feel like having been on the other end, it kind of demystified it a little bit
Yeah,
for me, even though I still find it fascinating. Like I think the last time I did seriously think about it was actually last Christmas season, because the House of Torment was doing a Krampus theme haunted house, which looked cool from the trailers that they had put up for them. And I was like, oh, haunted house in December, that's a little bit more unusual. So like that was interesting to me. But I mean, once you've been on the other side and you see how it's all done, it kind
yeah,
of took away a little bit. I'm not saying I'll never regain that, but like I haven't gone probably to a haunted house in like
sure.
5 years.
Julia,
You
I
know,
know that you don't really do these things.
no, I
Go ahead.
mean, I don't. I don't like being scared. I hate that feeling. But you know what Tony was saying before, it's reminding me of in the documentary. One of them mentioned that the big tough guys are the funniest ones to watch because they're the ones who freak out the worst. That
Interesting.
one kind of made me laugh, because the idea that you come in and you're like, yeah, I'm so tough, nothing scares me, and then they're just like, holy crap. And of course, those are probably the ones who often punch the people, but they do seem to. And then they talked about the people who just drop to their knees, like they've just had their knees knocked out from under them.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. I don't enjoy that feeling of being scared. The scariest thing that we did was we went to the where was that, the museum with the that has all the like the alien, the mother from Aliens and Dracula and all that. Was that at Disney, or was that in?
Oh, what was that?
No, that
I
was in
think that was
Hollywood. That's in Hollywood,
no,
I
that was
think.
the
That's
Hollywood Wax Museum,
Yeah, the Hollywood
right?
Wax Museum. That's like scarier to me than, I mean, I don't like the jump scares, but that was really scary because all of the creatures are right there, that you already have
Yeah.
so many.
And it was
Um,
awesome. That was
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
you have so many things. That's another endorsement, is that Wax Museum. And anyway,
The thing is,
but yeah, because you have so many preconceived notions about these creatures. So even if they don't in themselves, if they're not by themselves terrifying, you've seen them be terrifying. It's like, holy crap. But yeah.
I
to me,
actually
that was
like
like
wax
going through a
museums
picture
better
book.
than haunted houses. Like I
Yeah.
think that there's something mythic about that. But the thing that you're saying about like the big tough guys, it's absolutely 100% true. Like the room that I was in at House of Torment was like a tilted room, and basically it was set up so where it looked like a padded cell in a lunatic asylum, but it was done in such a way that I could move around like I was Spider-Man, and everybody else was kind of disoriented. And
Mhm.
the initial concept was that it was going to basically be a ripoff of Renfield from Bram Stoker's Dracula. But then the further we got into it, somehow I ended up being a clown. And the moment I became a
Interesting.
clown, everybody hated me. And there was one
Interesting.
night where, like, literally there was this big buff, I'm assuming UT student, and he was literally shoving his girlfriend in front of me to, like, keep it between us. So, like, that is absolutely spot on. Like, when they said that in the movie, I was like, oh, yeah, like, that is 100% true.
Well, I don't know if you've ever watched Ellen DeGeneres show, but I haven't watched it in a couple of years, but she has a thing where she likes to send her producer Andy into the haunted houses because he's so scared all the time. And he'll be with him and another producer, and he'll push the female producer, like hold her in front of him to guard him from the scares. So funny. But yeah, that makes
Spot
me laugh.
on.
Yeah. I mean, and for what it's worth, I don't. Although for me, it's more of a taste thing. None of this is really to my interest. I mean, I did it back in the 80s, but first of all, everything's been every all the footage I see of haunted houses, and I'm talking about boo scare haunted houses now, it's all been so heavily influenced by this sort of look and feel of horror of the last like 20 years. So there's all this
Oh yeah.
day glow paint, and there's lots of like grime and spatter, and like, and everything's all Eli Roth, and I'm like, I'm not interested in this. It just feels like an art movement that I just haven't really kind of glommed onto, and I don't like it. Also, that stuff creates complex feelings for me because I feel like it's all coarsened the culture. I'm mainly into horror. This is like, we're coming close to our 275th episode, and I realize that I'm mainly into horror because I like the spookiness, and I like the notion of a cosmic horror and worrying about what's on the other side, and stuff like that. But all of this stuff about, like, are you gonna tear up my hand in a garbage disposal? Who cares? It just doesn't feel like I can learn anything from it. So it
See,
just doesn't. I,
the
Go ahead.
the guy that says that he feels like the extreme haunts are a hack job, and meaning not that they hack you to pieces, but that
Yeah, let's get into
they're
him.
hacky and
That's our next
it's
guy.
cheap.
Yeah.
It's cheap. Well, yeah, I guess it's a good segue. I agree with that for a lot of the
Yeah.
reasons that you're talking about. Like I prefer like there to be some sort of psychology and like
Yeah.
spookiness to it,
The way he
whereas like
describes it. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, like when when you see the extreme stuff, of course someone's going to be unnerved by that because like you're basically inflicting a crime scene on them.
Yeah.
But like
They're
it doesn't
trapped.
really
They're tied down. Yeah. Yeah. We'll,
yeah,
we'll,
it
we'll
doesn't
get it.
really
We'll get to it in
evoke
a sec. We
like
keep wanting to go ahead because I think we're all just aching to talk about that experience. But yeah, the way so Donald Jolson as our next guy. Now he's a guy who is a sort of a lovable big dude who likes to wear black and wear sunglasses because so he says his eyes are
No,
medically.
it's not so he says.
No.
He actually went to a doctor. His mom said that his brother, that was one a really sad story because his brothers
Yeah.
would beat the crap out of him, and his mom, again, I mean, so much of this to me comes down to victims and psychological trauma and PTSD. The mom herself said, that she wanted him to be tougher like his brothers, and so she would humiliate him. His brothers would beat the crap out of him, and it
Yeah, what
resulted
the
in him
hell?
having
Yeah.
nerve damage, and he now has permanently dilated pupils.
I kind of
Yes.
wonder if they're like helping him with this haunt out of like a sense of guilt because they know they screwed up. Because
Maybe.
it does seem like that's how he kind of redeemed his relationship with his brother. You know,
Yeah.
They're
I
bullies,
actually
and he's like,
found
"Well, I can be a
that
bully if it's a haunted house, but I can't be a bully just in regular life."
yeah,
So
like
strange.
I actually found that just as interesting as a lot of the stuff with Russ. Like the he had this really weird tense relationship with his family, and that his brother had kind of tormented him, but now they have this kind of really close bond. But at
Yeah.
the same time, he also has this really tense relationship with his wife. Although I kind of wonder, like, they don't really make her look so great, but I kind of wonder if some of that was, I'm sure some of it is on the money, but I kind of wonder if
Yeah.
it's just like, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, but at the very end of the movie, you're like, oh, this is making money now, so
Well,
I'm
there's an element of
okay with it.
reality TV to them. So just so Russ, the big dude, wears the sunglasses. He did work, he was on Van Helsing. He was a Hollywood props guy. He hasn't really been able to do enough of that recently. So to keep being creative, he's been running an amateur haunted house that is really quite something. It's quite complex, quite ambitious. And he's got lots of kids working it, and it's a big deal. And his wife literally could not care less. And
It's not.
that is the funniest thing in the movie is watching
Well, she's
them.
kind of actively passive aggressive to him
No, it
about
is.
it.
It's not.
But
Yeah, I mean,
it's not that he couldn't make it as prop guy. It's that he said a lot of the prop work left Hollywood. 'Cause he
right.
actually had quite a nice
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
no doubt about
resume.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, he's really solid. It's just that he said a lot of the work moved like overseas, whatever it did, and so it dried up, so that he couldn't string together enough of these jobs to live with, and so this is what he's. But the wife, yeah, Drew, you're right. But the thing is, to some extent, because this is a documentary, and we live in the world of reality TV, I think to some extent all the shit that she says might be reality TV shit, that she's like,
I,
she knows she's on camera. Go ahead, Tony.
I think there's a little bit of that, but I also, Rain and I both were like, wow, why did she marry this guy?
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
It
there's
just seems
look,
like
there's
she's
tons
with the
of
wrong guy.
there's
Yeah.
tons of
Well,
stuff that Rain and I differ on. Like, she is not going to Fantastic Fest to watch 40 movies. That's the most recent example, right? Or any of that, like, that is not, but she fully supports it. And there's a lot of like people that you see where you see
but
them
this
and it's a change, like, but she
this
would
is
love for
not
him
his
to change.
this is not his full-time job. This is 2 months of the year. And so basically she's saying she likes 80% of him, but the 20% is where she could take or leave. And I think that probably is true for all of us with our mates. Just that we're only seeing this part of the story. But I'll bet you November through July they're like super happy together.
Except she says
One
you
would hope.
can't mention Halloween throughout the year. I don't want
Yeah,
to hear
exactly.
it. And like her approach to it is what I've seen with a lot of people. Not to psychoanalyze it, because again, I agree with Jason. It's a lot of reality TV stuff. But when I watch her reactions and how she approaches things, it's definitely like, why are you together? Like, it's
Right.
definitely
And
I could
how
change
long
him.
are you gonna be together?
If only these things he loves were different. That's
Yeah.
not as cool. And it seems like they kind of have worked it out by the end, and that's fine. And I don't know them. Like, I could be totally wrong. But when I see that, I've seen it more than once. Hey, if only you didn't love this one thing you really love as much, you'd be the perfect guy. And or girl, like, it works both ways. I'm not, we see that in her in this one, but it's both, it's
But
just
you know what? She will, if assuming they stay together, she will figure out that she can't change this about him, and she'll learn to live with it. And it is a thing. It's just there's things like that for Jason and me after 23 years. And I'm sure you guys with your spouses as well. Where for a while you were like, "Gosh, I really wish that you didn't do this thing," and then the person either changed it or they didn't, and then you went, "Okay, this is how it is now." If they didn't, you're like, and the same is true for you. It's like you just kind of learn to live with it. So her thing is we're seeing that little, I mean, they just got married. So we're seeing that her kind of battling and going, is this a thing I can change? Because you see they have that conversation on screen where she's like, well, once we have kids, this will go away. And he's like, yeah, we'll see. If he decides they have kids and he goes, well, first of all, if they decide to have kids. And second, if they have the kids and he goes, okay, yeah, I think I really want to focus on doing stuff that my kids will enjoy for now. And then when they're older, we can bring this back and bring them into it. Great. And if not, then she will have to figure out how to live with that. But I think that's pretty normal, and we just happen to be seeing it. It doesn't doom the whole relationship.
Well, it does seem like they might be on that path at the end of the movie, but it also seems a little on the predatory side, at least the way it plays out, because it's like, oh, this is making money now. Okay. At least
but
that's
it's just
the way
a
it came off
job.
to
I
me.
mean, he gets a new job that does pay money. So he's no longer it's everything. First of all, when we see her at the worst, it is because they are in crunch time for him to put on this show, essentially. And so it's probably literally driving her up the wall. So she is probably going to say the ugliest stuff now while it is at the worst. And he's probably going to be his worst. So they're sending angry texts to one another. Anyway, they'll, the funny thing is what Julia was talking about the whole, you learn to figure out what you can put up with. You also kind of make compromises along the way. He may very well, he'll probably figure out ways to try to bug her a little bit less with his obsessions, and she'll probably try to figure out ways to be a little less bugged by what she is. But
there's
you
only
start
three
out.
ways. There's only three ways this can go. He dials it down, and she's happier with that. She gets over it, or they split up. And that's if one of those three will happen. Who knows what it'll be? It's like
or more than one. I mean, you could have a couple of those. You could have like both a dialing down and a getting over it. And I think that's how. Go ahead.
I did love that he described Halloween as the woman he cheats on his wife with. So because that definitely seems like the relationship. And Jason and Julia, don't get me wrong, I do get why this would, like, as much as I love Halloween, which is a considerable lot.
Considerable amount. Yeah.
Yeah, I get where she's coming from. Like if if I was like because I am the monster loving guy that I am. Like I definitely relate more to Donald, but like I see where she's coming from. That probably would be like a little much to somebody, but there was times where I definitely was doing the same thing that Tony is saying, where I'm like, well, why did she get with this guy? Because like usually, like when you're dating somebody, you have those first few dates where you're on the very like putting your best foot forward things, but usually within the first month of dating, like those little like foibles and obsessions, like those are starting to crack through. Yeah. Like people are going to see what you're all about.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I don't know, but again, that's what I'm saying. It's like you're saying about the reality TV thing, but I don't think it's necessarily that they've staged it. I think it's that they're showing you, like Jason said, the worst of it, and so because that makes for good drama. And I mean, heck, she wouldn't be in it if it wasn't for that. So that was super interesting.
Because she could have said, we know we're seeing this, right? We know we're seeing this documentary. Any person whose face was not blurred in this thing knew what was in this thing and said, yes, go ahead, use it. So, just think about that.
If she didn't say any of those things, they wouldn't have bothered showing her. Like, they would show her for like a few seconds where, like, the husband of what's the name, the woman's name?
The scare actress. Like, her husband was in it, but he was kind of a non-entity because comparatively he's not interesting.
Right. Yeah. He goes, I'm not really into this. She's gone, for a couple. It's a big deal. It takes up a lot of time. He's very matter of fact. He's made his peace with it.
The other guy who's like, we're not talking about my wife. She's out of the picture. I was like, okay.
Yeah. Well, they use the term haunt widow, which again, I actually heard people using that when I worked at House of Torment, and this was, going on 8-9 years ago. So like a lot of these little slang terms that, are kicked around in this movie, like that it was interesting seeing. I was like, oh, so that's still a thing, I did kind of, even though I don't wish anybody's relationship to be strained, I did, I'm not going to lie, like I did get a kick out of that.
Well, I identified with the girl a little bit because she, like, the whole idea that she goes, this is really actually kind of fun when she gets into doing the job with him, because she's like, now I'm part of it. It's not just 16 hours of him being gone and now I'm part of it. Like, that's why I wanted to do this podcast at first, because I was like, well, Jason is going to be doing this thing, and we don't really have anything that we're doing together right now, so this will be fun, even though I couldn't care less about horror movies. So, I mean, to me, that was because I'm a writer's widow. That's what I am. It's like he goes off and he's writing, and there's really not much I can do except for just write at the same time as him. But it's not a thing that you can do together per se. So, I totally identified with that, and so I liked that they did have a project that they were able to do together, and it brought them closer. So I thought it was
what, that is completely fair. Like I that actually just changed the way I viewed that whole thing, because I was seeing it is almost like coming from a greedy place, the way that ends up, and that completely repaints the light that it ends on. I hope you were right. I think that's a nice way to look at it.
Well, and even with the money piece, I mean, if she's thinking, if you're going to be gone 16 hours a day, at least bring home some bacon, that would be a good thing, I get that, because he's probably not working while he's doing all that, and so maybe.
Well, I'm sure he's. Well, it's a good question. I do find it interesting that this is an interesting look at Americans who are doing these sort of vocations that usually are done. They're like the people who made Phantasm, right? They're doing it after their jobs. And so this would be true if you were spending 20 hours a week doing summer stock, or doing Santaland, or doing the haunted house, or working with the Boy Scouts, or whatever it is that you do, and you're obsessed with it, and your family is like, well, mom, or dad, they're going to be, for the next 2.5 months, they're going to be out every night doing this thing. And I love that. I love that our culture actually will sustain that. I mean, you can argue actually that it doesn't sustain it very well, because it kind of sucks if the thing that people love is something that they can't actually make money doing. But having said that, I love that a lot of people are able to do it anyway, and they work a day job. These people that we're about to talk about, the Russ people, they have day jobs, and then at night they do their thing. So actually, I'm really excited that we talked about that couple, but now it is time to talk about literally the most troubling thing in here. So you mentioned um, Russ McNamee, and am I saying that right? No, McCamey. Russ McCamey, and he is the guy who runs the McCamey Manor, and that is a haunt, really called a haunt. But Donald, the guy who has that we were just talking about, he refers to it as equivalent to taping you down to a chair and and threatening you with a knife, because there's no real theme to it as far as I can tell, other than you
It's a
will
face. It's
be
face. Theoretically, it's face your fears. I mean,
right.
and I can
It's
understand
fear factor,
if.
like,
Yeah,
but
I could
worse.
understand if that's all it was. It's like, okay, you were going to design an experience for you where you get to face your fear and you decide. But I'm so troubled by the lack of the safe word, because that's where it becomes a
Okay,
sadistic,
so
psychopathic
somebody
thing.
somebody explain what is the deal with the safe word? Like, what are you talking about when you talk
A
about that?
safe word is it's just like a safe word in S&M. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like when someone has had enough, they say this
yeah,
word, and in the world of haunted houses, they remove you. And again,
yeah.
House of
They
Torment
push you
had
out a
had
magic
one.
exit and you're
Yeah,
gone, right? But
yeah,
here
you're
they
done.
might be pushing bugs into your mouth. They might be taping up your face. They might be waterboarding you, and you say, "I'm done. I want this to be over with," and they say no.
Oh,
They
you
say
do?
no.
Oh, okay, sure. And then they're like, no, and they lock you into the coffin anyway, or whatever. Like he's like, oh, you don't want that. You don't be a wuss or whatever. But he just keeps doing it, and he's giddy about it. He's videotaping them. He is. He's getting so much pleasure out of seeing them be tortured, and that's what makes me think that he's a psychopath. Because there's not like he's going, I'm trying to help people face their fears. He's traumatizing them, and I really do believe that a lot of these people will suffer PTSD. He says nobody's ever been hurt, and then they're like, oh, what about that guy who had the heart attack? Well, except him, he gets a big smile on his face. That
Well,
guy
it's
who had the
and
heart attack, yeah.
I
But I
bet people
mean,
have heart attacks all the time in any haunted environment. But
yeah, but the point is, he's talking about hurt like they haven't had to go to the physical hospital to have their
yeah.
leg in traction or been paralyzed or been killed by anything. But they are very psychologically injured, and that's
Okay, what do
the
you
real
make of the
thing.
fact that all of these people, he says there's thousands, like 17,000 person wait list. Each of these experiences lasts for
Doesn't
3 or 4
charge it.
hours. He
Yeah.
doesn't charge. It's free.
He
It's a
donates dog food to
yeah.
to a greyhound
And
rescue.
it's basically a sculptured, curated experience just for you. And he interviews you to find out what you're afraid of. So in theory, you've watched all the videos. You know what you're getting into. So is it then okay that he takes that to mean that once you are through his doors, you're his until he decides to free you? I don't.
No, hell no,
Well,
it's not okay.
I'll tell you what
Like
I
all of
think,
this
but
should
Wait,
be
wait,
go
wait,
ahead.
wait,
regulated, in
wait.
my opinion. Like
What does Tony
Go ahead,
think?
Tony.
I said, hell no, it's not okay. Who is
Yeah.
this guy to be arbiter of like it's okay to psychologically scar people?
Right.
My thing that got me, like, I can understand, like, I think the blackout guy is messed up too.
Yeah.
I really disagree with that tack. These people are not psychologists. This is not aversion therapy. It is
Yeah.
not well regulated. This again, I go back watching him watch these videos because that's the difference. If you go to House of Torment, you don't get a video of that. Watching him watch the videos and put them out and edit this and watching the look on his face and the look on his face when he's telling people, and again, some of it may be played up for the camera because he's got to sell this extreme experience. Even a documentary has a narrative, right?
Yeah.
By filming someone, they act differently. It's just the way people work.
Yeah.
But watching him unscripted, without him just talking to the camera, watching him edit the videos, watching the glee on his face when he's telling somebody, no, you don't get to do what I tell you.
Yeah.
And he fits the profile again. He was such a nice guy. Oh, look, he's a wedding singer. Nicest guy ever.
Mm-hmm.
That guy has some things going on, and everyone around him is ableist. And when you get down to where they start mentioning, oh, well, we had this one guy who we found out some bad stuff about him. The way he screens people.
Yeah.
Also, again, like we're only getting X amount of the picture. But I think it's pretty evenly covered. I mean, Jon does a good job of being a good documentary filmmaker. This other thing where he gets people who want to, like the two guys who come out of his thing go, I just want to hurt people. The girl who says that too. This is a very cultist approach to things. Mm-hmm. Dangerously so, in my opinion.
Well, and again, he's not paying them. I know I keep harping on that, but again, working in a haunted house is not easy.
They're doing it because they love it. Yeah.
Yeah, but the fact that he's not paying them and they're doing it because they're loving it, and the sort of things that they're doing.
Yeah.
That's really, and look, I'm not gonna like no joke, like I scared the hell out of people when I worked in a haunted house. And it's addictive. It's an adrenaline rush. It's a charge. I never wanted to take breaks when I was doing it. Like you have breaks because it's a job,
sure.
but I never wanted to do it because you get such a charge.
Yeah.
But here's my question, Drew. I have a question.
But if they were to ask me to do some of the stuff that I see them doing here, I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Right. I have a question for you because I will jump out and scare Sophia because she screams and then laughs, and it cracks me up. I think it's hysterical. But I will not do that with our younger one because she will cry. And I'm like, no, I don't want to see her be upset and cry. I want it to be funny. And so my question is, if somebody cries, does that trouble you, or do you just go, oh, well, that's how it goes? Or is it only fun just to see them scream?
There would be people that would get teared up, and sometimes in the moment, I never thought about it because there was first of all, there was too many people to really sit there and contemplate. You just had to keep going and going and going and going. So sometimes I would think about the teared up people later, and it would trouble me, but it wasn't the sort of tears that you're seeing on these people. It was the sort of tear, I've seen people do similar things while watching scary movies,
sure.
it's not the same thing. Jason brought up the stuff about Saw and Hostel and those kind of movies and their effect on the horror genre as a whole. I kind of, I was talking about this with somebody actually online the other day. I actually agree with that. I feel like those movies have sort of they're what created these haunts. I do sort of feel like in a lot of ways they destroyed the horror genre for a while because there was no mystery to it anymore, and
it was just being tied up. And to me, it's all sexual. I have to say, here's what is really telling to me. Tony mentions him watching those videos, and I want to drill into this for a moment. Russ says, there was somebody doing something inappropriate sexually that I got rid of, and he makes it really clear. He wants you to know there's nothing sexual here. Fuck that, man. This is a sexual act he is doing. When he is watching those things, he is locked in. He is watching porn. It's just porn for him. It is the weirdest thing. It is like I had a friend who had a new girlfriend who, whenever they were together, she insisted on being punched in the face. That's what's going on here. He is getting off on this, and it is so weird. That's why he doesn't need money. This is the most valuable thing in the world to him.
But he's the dominator, or whatever the male version is of dominatrix.
Absolutely.
He is not the one who wants to be punched in the face because he doesn't like to be scared. In fact, he just really avoids that.
No, that's not where his triggers are. His triggers are seeing other people begging to be released. That's stuff.
That's the sadistic part.
He wants to
but
feel
then
power.
I love that he goes, oh, but we had to get rid of our teen volunteers because there was some sexually inappropriate stuff going on. He's so moral and
right.
ethical.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Oh well, who the hell's hiring a teen for that fucking thing in the first place?
Yeah, no, of course.
That whole idea of they know what they were doing. I told them. They signed up for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's some bullshit.
Well, the thing is it does actually go to show you like this is all taking place in the suburbs, and it does like really show you how the fact that this has existed for so long, like how much our society hangs on appearances, because like this is the most normal looking middle-aged couple that you could imagine. Like like the wife looks kind of like a toned down version of Peg Bundy. The guy looks like a gray-haired Barney Rubble. You know, this isn't Gomez and Morticia Adams, because I guarantee you if they were like a goth couple, this would have been shut down years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
I think she's a victim. I think that she and look, again, not a psychiatrist.
I think she's a willing. Fuck no. I think she is a willing participant. She's like,
no,
man, I would love it if.
I definitely think she's a victim. I think she hates it, and I think he is. I
never got the sense that she hated it at all.
No, she totally does. She always is saying, like, whenever you listen to her, you didn't pay attention to what you're saying, because she is a victimist guy. He is as much of a narcissist, as much of a sadist, as much of a psychopath with her as he is with these people. And you could see that in her eyes, because never does she see, like when she says it used to be fun when we started, but now she goes, people just want it. And she's acting as if what people want, they have to do. They're slaves to the people. People want more and more, and and she has this look of like just despair in her eyes when she says people just want more and more. And then later on they're like, well, has it caused any strain in your marriage? She's like, oh yeah, like huge, major. I mean, I don't remember how she put it, but she was saying it's been a huge strain. I think that, I think she's a victim. Absolutely, I think she's a victim.
Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm misjudging her, but I don't know. Like, she seems a little too willing to go along with it. But I mean, then again, maybe you're talking about a potentially variation of an abusive marriage. She could be the equivalent of someone enabling an alcoholic. I mean,
of course. But when we say victim, I think that Joy and I both probably mean, Joy, I don't mean to speak for you, but when I said that, what I mean is she is locked into this relationship in the same way that he's locked into his torture porn.
No, I don't think that. I think she is literally a victim of his, like, Patty Hearst. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Like, she is.
But I think she even takes.
Yeah, like, well, not even. But I don't even know if she enjoys it as much as Patty Hearst seemed to. But I mean, I think that he treats her the way he treats the people in the house. I'm sure that behind the scenes, he probably. I'm sure in the bedroom, there's probably some really demented stuff that he tries to do if he doesn't actually do it. I just don't. I can't see this guy stopping at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be too. Yeah, but my point is, a person like that doesn't stop at home. Like that's how they are. If he's like this with them,
I agree with you with that. I agree with you on that. Like, and I mean, in some of the ways, I was a little sad that even though they were absolutely fascinating subjects, like I was a little sad that this was kind of the bulk of it, because
it overwhelms the documentary, and I don't say that to diss the documentary.
I like Halloween, and I kind of would have liked to see more about like the traditional haunt stuff, because that speaks to me more. And this was almost like watching a train wreck. Like, it's like you can't look away, because it's not like, I don't know, like I like everybody else, I guess, I was very much troubled by this couple. I was very much troubled by Russ, and like I felt bad for when he had convinced that the one woman,
the neighbor. Okay, talk about that, because I think this is like probably the most dangerous thing that they show him do is when he gets the neighbor to go into the thing.
Well, so they have a neighbor that basically looks down at their haunt, like she's
literally
up on a hill.
She's up the hill,
and so she's looking down at this, and she decides that she's going to go to the haunt, and then when she's in line to do it, she gets cold feet and tries to walk away, and the wife actually literally drives her down, puts her in her car, drives her back, and makes her go through it. But the thing that I was so, like, and she's absolutely, like Julia said, traumatized by this experience, and yet she goes back 2 more times because Russ finds a way to manipulate her into going back into it, which absolutely seems like almost like a cult.
No, that's this is exactly why, as I was watching it, you see these extremely cult-like experiences. Like I said, the two guys and woman who immediately want to hurt people. They've experienced a thing. Now I just want that feeling back. I want that feeling back. And I want to make people have this feeling. Russ manipulates those people into that, whether he wanted to or not. But again, you're the head of something. You're responsible. How you can't just absolve responsibility by saying, I give the people what they want.
Yeah.
Again, Julia, this is where it gets weird. So you say I think maybe she's trapped, but she actually did go get in her car, run after somebody, put them back in the car, and drive them back to a terrible experience that was harrowing for this person.
But again, that's the Patty Hearst piece. That's the piece where
I get it.
If you have this guy who is going to, let's just imagine, I don't know anything about their life, but let's just imagine that when nobody else is around, he browbeats her, he abuses her psychologically, maybe physically, maybe sexually.
Well, this gets, because it's real people though, Julia, like, this is where it gets into, like, we don't know. I will put this disclaimer.
Yeah, but my point is, you can't assume that she's doing this willingly. It could be that he goes, go get her, and she knows what happens if she doesn't do what he says. You know what I'm saying? That's a possibility.
Yeah, those are assumptions. I have no idea.
No, you're right.
Definitely weird.
I'm going to stick with thinking like this is like an alcoholic and an enabler, because like the moment I said that, like, that is the only way I can understand this relationship in any human terms, because like the other place my brain goes is almost too bizarre, because I start thinking about Joker and Harley Quinn from Batman the animated series.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
I have to say this, and again, just as a disclaimer, none of us are psychiatrists, whatever. None of us are lawyers who specialize in the kind of law that could actually speak with authority over what I'm going to say right now. The contract that he has those people sign is not worth the paper it's written on. If one of them says, you body slammed me and I hurt my back, he is toast. He's toast. And you know, if one of them says, yeah, I signed your thing,
except he doesn't let you keep a copy.
It doesn't matter. It really does. I'm telling you right now, it doesn't matter.
All the more reason it doesn't matter. All the more reason it doesn't matter, because then you go, he did this thing to me. He's going to have to produce this contract and show.
It's going to be weak. He'll dig it up, and it just doesn't even. His wife has the right idea when she says, "Oh yeah, we need to send them a copy." He goes, "No, don't." It doesn't matter. The moment he gets sued because somebody says these guys hurt my back. By the way, nobody says that in the documentary.
Or the PTSD and the intentional infliction of emotional distress and the false imprisonment and whatever else. I mean, there's all kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
Or let's think about this for a second. Let's say like somebody with real psychological issues ends up in that haunt, and like, you know, that we talked earlier about people flipping out and attacking haunt actors.
Yeah.
Like, I guarantee you, like, you start doing some of that stuff that they do to some of the people in there, I would beat the snot out of him.
Listen,
if
to
he
the
tried to force a fuck down my mouth.
If they're not aware, he has people throw up, and then he forces the vomit back into their mouth.
Yeah, like you know, I think you know, it's not a matter of if. This is a matter of when. Like, somebody's gonna slap him with a lawsuit.
Well, he said the police is involved, the FBI is involved. Who knows what they're doing?
Yeah,
well, I think that was I think that was showmanship, because like there is a level of like bullshit artist for this guy, as much as like I think a lot of the sadism is completely genuine. Like, you know, he's also, you know, at least, you know, 20% P.T. Barnum, if not more.
Well, there is the possibility that a lot of this is fake. That he actually does have a safe. That you know, that a lot of this is just intended to make us think that it's a scarier experience than it really is. I don't know, but I'm going to go with I believe what I'm seeing, that the people really are terrified. Just really quickly, because I know I interrupted.
If the FBI was involved, he would be shut down already, because it's right. It's an amateur haunt in his backyard.
Just to say really quickly, if you. Let's say we do this thing where I invite you over for a really scary experience, and I say, by the way, I'm going to do all this stuff to you. I'm going to terrify you and punch you and hurt you. And you go, sounds good to me. That's fine. And then you come over, and then I do nothing. I just say something cross to you, and you go, listen, I'm done. I want to leave right now. And you say no. The moment you say no, we've now entered a universe called false imprisonment, and that's a crime. That's so. It's there. There's
And this
somebody.
is why we tell you not to say all that stuff at the end of each episode of the podcast.
That's true. There you go.
Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's super disturbing. The thing with the just going back to the thing with the blackout, the same idea, but we didn't get that. It didn't feature it, but I'm sure there's plenty of weird assaults going on there that people are probably, so who knows what's actually happening.
People were in, like, I guess LA and seemed more overtly like show busy. They were inherently less interesting than this very suburbanite couple that like that just made the sadism seem more lurid for some reason.
Yeah. You mean the blackout people?
The blackout people seem more bland because they are more.
Here's what I got from them. Those guys. That guy also says, he comes out and he's like,
I don't think he talked about what actually happens there, because the guy said, remember, he goes, I did stuff in there that I would get arrested for normally, that my marriage would suffer for. I'm like, what? Because they don't really tell you.
But he looks like a weird, but because he looks like a weirdo, because when he's saying that stuff, like the contradiction is not there. Whereas like Russ looks like somebody that would be working at a used car lot. Yeah. Like, so it makes it that more freakish.
The blackout guy also is like, oh, I had this military experience, and then I'm going to bring that kind of stuff plus some other stuff, and we're going to be extreme and all this stuff. Like, his take on it seems in some ways even more calculated. He's doing it, and I agree with Drew, as like it's more showmanship and definitely more calculated in the way that he does it, but equally scary in a different way, because it's like, hey, I had, me and the people who come up with this have had this experience, and we're going to show people another extreme experience, because, you normies don't have this, is kind of the impression that he kind of puts out, which is, again, equally as disturbing. This isn't supposed to be a version therapy.
Here's the thing about that. Like, if you were to describe to me various haunted houses and like, okay, would you like to go into one of these? You described to me Blackout, where it's like this weird sort of like sexual thing. I would be like, no, I'm not going to go to that, because I want to see like monsters and cool makeup effects and stuff that could not happen in the real world. So I'm a little mystified that they're like, I hear that McCamey Manor has this big long wait list, and then I hear that like Blackout is this very successful thing. I'm a little mystified as to where their customer base is coming from, because none of that seems to me particularly Halloween-y, I guess.
No, you're right. It's probably more the audience that is going to be into the S&M stuff, like anybody who would go to sex shows.
I've known.
It's not even S&M. This is not a leather box. This is I'm going to duct tape your mouth and threaten you with a knife.
No,
I mean, Donald had it exactly right.
The sexual stuff, yeah.
Okay.
But like,
so you're
with
just
S&M, there's like, I don't know. I've known people in the fetish community, and I don't even know that they would be into that, because it's not like it's not like a controlled environment. It's not, there's no element of real theater there. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't understand quite where the customer base is, other than just like maybe people that are trying, like, oh, I made it through this thing. Listen to how tough I am. Like, that's really the only way I could wrap my head around it, because like I like Halloween, but at the same time, like, none of that stuff really spoke to that side of me.
It's a different interest that you have about Halloween. I talked a little bit about why I like horror. These guys are saying, listen, either they're saying, my life has been such that I really feel like I've never felt anything that extreme, and I would really like to. That's what some people say. Others clearly have some intense experiences that they'd like to kind of somehow complement in a way with this sort of somewhat simulated but very threatening experience. But they don't last. I mean, if you look in Wikipedia, it says that people tend to last about 10 minutes. Now, here's where I say there might be an element of fakery going on. Because, and I'm not saying on the part of the documentary, I'm saying on the part of Russ, because in the Wikipedia it says that nobody ever makes it through, and yet we see him not letting people escape. And the problem is, So I can't tell which is true. In other words, it may very well be that he actually does just sort of unplug people and kick them out much quicker than he says he does, but he doesn't show that on the. I have no idea. I just I still have this element of I'm not sure how much what I'm seing is real. For what
Well,
it's
the fact that he's like a wedding singer
Yeah.
also means that this guy's a big ham. Like that's
For
like
sure.
the thing that kind of throws a level of like it makes me feel skeptical about it. You know, like it seems, you know, and it seemed like when he was talking about his background, like he had always wanted to be like a pop singer when he was young, and so there is this,
No,
this
but
showmanness to him that does
Yeah.
make me question, like
But
how Jason
the
said.
showman part is not the dark side. That's the part that makes people like trust him and think he's a good
Well,
guy.
no, but it makes
The dark
it
side,
makes me
like Tony was saying, when you watch how he looks when he's watching these videos and when he's editing them, that's
But
the,
that could
like,
be fake
the really
too.
scary part.
Like he.
No, I don't think it is. I think that's when you're seeing the
No.
real guy.
It might
No.
not.
Well,
It might not be. It might not be. I'm not saying that it is, but like he knew that this documentary filmmaker is going to be watching him, so he could have planned. And I'm like that I did question. I questioned that. Not that I felt like that the guy making the documentary was like a part of that, but like if you know you're going to be on camera, you could behave in a certain way
That's
that
because,
you might.
Drew, you're
think.
a good person and you don't want to believe that anybody is that fucked up.
Well, no,
But he is.
Drew's saying the same thing that I said.
I'm not that good.
So here again, hopefully we can get an interview with Jon Schnitzer. We're hoping. We'll see. Hopefully he likes what we said about his film. But
the director, yeah.
Anyway, that's a hope. We'll see if it works out. But there's a carnival barker aspect to Russ, and I think a lot of it is played up. Like you're on camera, you have a thing to promote. He's he's scarily affable, and this is what makes true evil. Is it's not like Dracula pure evil. It's the fact that this guy is suburban. And again, I could be wrong. I fully admit this. But usually when you see somebody glued to a screen, and this is a very effective documentary thing. When you watch somebody and they're in their element, they're in their flow, they're in their zone. You'll see it when people are enjoying a movie in a documentary or reacting in horror or at a convention, like a comic book convention, etc. And you watch the look on their face. He has got to be such a good actor. If any of those expressions that he has when he's editing and watching his own films, that he's playing back for himself, in a very fetish manner.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying
those are true. I think that's truly him, in my opinion.
You're probably right. I'm just saying, like, there's part of me, like the cynical part of me, in fact, that questioned whether or not like this was all like some big
I don't think you can fake that though. I don't think you can fake that part. The rest of it,
you're probably right. You're probably right.
Yeah, I just because that's when it changed for me. Like he's going to provide an extreme service, and he's his own jigsaw, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I don't agree with that. None of that looked fun or anything like I would want me or anybody I was close to experience. But definitely the part where it changed for me in this documentary is watching him watch those and watch and edit those videos. That's where I was like, man, there's nothing about this guy I want to meet or talk about or talk to. Show me more Donald. That guy, like, he has a passion and he's an artist. Yeah, I'd had enough of Russ right around that point, other than being a fascinating subject for a documentary.
Yeah. Wow. You know what? I want to talk about anything else but this guy. I gotta say, I can't
Well, we should probably be wrapping it up anyway.
Yeah, well, let's wrap it up. I do want to get our final thoughts and then get over to endorsements and talk about the kind of stuff that we love. Because I mean, this guy just makes me want to like dive into the ocean and forget all about his whack ass life.
Like the creature.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
like
the creature. Exactly.
Yeah, like the creature.
Yeah, that's
not on fire.
Okay, so let's go in the same order. It was Tony, Drew, Julia, and then I'll go. So, Tony, final thoughts on this documentary, and I think for certainly our feelings about the documentary are different from our feelings about Russ, the guy who is in part of it. Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I would recommend this documentary to anybody who, definitely to anybody who loves Halloween and has been to haunted houses and that's been part of their life. I think there's fascinating subject matter. And not to shill too much, but if you get the Blu-ray or any of the, there's on the site I posted it. There's like 30 minutes of extra material with some of the people who were interviewed. I was, since I heard about this and was sad that I didn't see it at Fantastic Fest. Everybody said, "Hey, John was gave cool Q&As, and you should see this thing, and it's so scary, scarier than anything else I've seen." Probably talking about the extreme haunt experiences, which are real, which is another reason why I don't do that, because I kind of, you can see some of that on the news, especially when they comment about, Abu Ghraib and, beheadings and stuff like that. Like, that doesn't really do it for me. But I think as a documentary about all of this, it's, fascinating to see the people behind the scares. I would watch it, like I said, back to back, do a double feature with American Scream, and then the 6th Street Halloween thing as well, like you were mentioning, Jason. I think it's really an effective documentary that exposed the thing I didn't know about. And I agree with everybody who gave it a positive, thumbs up from Fantastic Fest. I think this is the perfect kind of Halloween. Get into that, maybe you'll be more likely to go to House of Torment. Like, man, I haven't been in a while. Or maybe you're like, nope, watching this, I'm out. I had forgotten I don't want to experience that. Either way, this documentary is effective at eliciting any and all of those responses, and it's fascinating subject matter, perfect for this time of year.
Excellent. Drew, what would you add to that?
Well, as an aside, one of the things they show in this movie is the American Werewolf in London haunted house they did at Universal Studios, and that looked awesome. And I'm kind of sad that I didn't get to see that in person, because that looked amazing. I thought I agree with everything Tony said. Like, this actually made me want to go to a haunted house. It actually made me want to maybe work in a haunted house again, but I would probably have to lose at least 20 pounds and get back into fighting shape to do it. I'm not joking. The most physically demanding job that I've ever had, and I was a butcher for 8 years, which is also physically demanding. It was crazy. And so, like, it brought back a lot of fond memories, because I made friends working at House of Torment that I'm still friends with. I like the Halloween party that I went to last night was thrown by somebody that I met that. So, like, all of that stuff rang true, and this is a great movie to watch during October, and I think it was actually it complemented Halloween 3 oddly in a weird way. Like, I just think this is a really good film, and I'm glad Tony brought it to us, because I did get a kick out of watching it, even though I didn't always like the people they were profiling.
Excellent. That's excellent. Thank you. Julia, so what were your thoughts on this film, Haunters?
I mean, I agree with Tony that it's a really well done documentary, and it's I was riveted. I mean, I think they did a great job of balancing the stories and of bringing us really an interesting look at kind of the extremes and then sort of what's in between. So yeah, it's super well done. I definitely recommend it. But like I said, for me, I think the only thing missing is I would have loved to have seen a psychological analysis of what happens to some of these people and what makes a person, like, that's what I would love to have seen, is somebody commenting on what makes a person want to do this, to like scare people, and to what extreme, and what happens to someone who goes through something really extreme. Do they get PTSD? Do they get are they scarred for life? What happens? Can they overcome their fears from it? Is there a good side to it? So I would love to, and then of course an analysis of what the heck Russ is. I would love to have seen that. But other than that, I think it's a really, really well done piece.
Excellent. Yes, it is. It is very well done. I was just realizing watching it There's 17,000 people who want to go through the Russ experience. I realize that I'm not that guy. I'm vaguely interested in going through a haunted house, but I realize also that the style of haunted houses today, none of them are to my taste because they're all heavily influenced by the look and feel of the post-Saw, post-Hostel universe, which is fine. That's totally great, but you know, I, I'm I'm not in it for that. It's not my thing.
I
So
think you probably get something out of Not Scary Farm, which they talk about
yeah,
in this.
no,
Like
and
that's more
Universal
Oh,
original.
would probably be pretty. Yeah,
you know,
that's a good point.
I feel remiss
Um,
that we didn't go through. We could probably add an extra 30 minutes or so talking about all the
sure.
other great haunts. Because he's such a firebrand, we spent a long time talking about Russ, but
Well,
Not Scary Farm and just all the Universal. Like, there's, just so everybody knows, there's great stuff.
yeah.
Just with everybody reacting to really cool haunts that they've experienced, and just really cool, the history of haunts and how that
Yeah, there's some
happens.
moments about the history. Yeah, the early haunted houses of the '60s, which I find fascinating. So yeah, this is a very, very well done thing, and I think more so than let's say if it had been a History Channel just recap of the history of haunted houses, I don't think there would be nearly as much for you and your friends if you chose to watch this documentary to talk about. I mean, I think you watch this one, and you and your friends are going to go out afterwards and have coffee and really try to wrap your heads around what you think and where your opinion lands on it. So I think it's really well done. Something else. I watched that movie Houses at October Built 2 recently, and I interviewed the directors of that movie. And it involves some people who get wrapped up in an extreme haunt like this. And let me tell you, the stuff that you see in this documentary make you realize that the fictional extreme haunt that they put into Houses at October Built 2 is not nearly as extreme. And I think it's because they believe that nobody would believe it. I, I think that they just that they're like nobody would believe you if you said I'm gonna like waterboard people and then make them re-swallow their own vomit and make spiders crawl in their faces. I mean that's just it's nobody.
Lock them in a
You
coffin. Yeah.
lock them in a coffin. Locking them in a coffin actually is one that they do in house, if I recall. Yeah, but
No, but I mean,
yeah,
locking them and not let them out. That one traumatized me the most because I'm really terrified of that, of being
yeah.
trapped. So that
Everybody
one
has
really.
a thing.
Yeah.
Everybody has their triggers, and I can totally dig that. I mean, if you said, "Listen, I'm most afraid of somebody hurting my children," would you hire somebody to impersonate their children and then physically threaten them in a scene? Is that what you would do? I mean, I guess. I mean, I'm just trying to think like
Don't
how.
give him any ideas, Jason.
I mean, there's all kinds of ways. If you really wanted to set out to create a curated torture experience for every person, you know, it seems like you should be getting more money for it, though. I don't know. It's an interesting question. This thing. Anyway, beautiful documentary, just beautiful and really great. But it made me realize how much I love my life, and that's so to that extent, I guess it had a really positive effect. Positive effects. Let's talk about the things that we're endorsing this week that are bringing us joy. Beyond this one, Tony, I know that you endorse this movie, but what else you got for us this week?
So a couple things. Well, what I mentioned, 1922, the other Stephen King novella that's been adapted by
Have not
Netflix,
seen it.
it's awesome. I think we should cover both this and Gerald's Game at some point in the future. I also today popped in on also on Netflix. Little Evil, which is a dark comedy about what happens if you become stepfather of basically Damien. And
Oh, cool.
yeah, it's pretty good, man. It's breezy in a way. It's hard to say about horror, right? But I enjoyed it. If you
I think that Sophia is playing that game. I think our older daughter is
Oh no,
actually
it's
playing that
a
game.
movie. Adam Scott,
Oh,
Evangeline Lilly, a host of other people you've seen in other
oh.
things.
Well, that's okay. I apologize. There's a game
Sally,
also where you're
Sally
where you're
Fields,
raising Damien, but
Sally Field, Clancy Brown. It's yeah, lots of cool people. Basically, Adam Scott becomes stepdad to Evil, and it's horror comedy. It's pretty good. I enjoyed it a lot, actually. So those are my 2 endorsements this week. You should see 1922. Really effective. 20s Americana. Differs somewhat from the novella. The budget didn't allow for some of the things, if you read it, to quite play out the same, but is really effective and beautifully shot. They gave a great Q&A at Fantastic Fest. The director's a really cool guy. This is a new kind of renaissance for Stephen King movies. I hope it continues. If they're as good as Gerald's Game and 1922, I think we're going to get a lot of great stuff.
Did you see 1408? The one with John Cusack where he's...
I need to, and I haven't.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, actually. If I'm remembering that, I believe it was called 1408. But it's the John Cusack one where he has to, he goes to haunted hotels and writes articles about them, and he hears about this super haunted room, and so he wants to stay there, and it was actually really good. And you think, how scary can you make a movie that takes place almost entirely in one hotel room? And the answer is pretty scary. It was good. It was good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for the tip. That's 1922. Okay, outstanding. Drew, what do you got for us?
Well, I also would like to plug some movies that are on Netflix right now. One is also a horror comedy. It's one they put up last week. It's called The Babysitter, and it's essentially a horror comedy about a young preteen who finds out his babysitter is running a satanic cult while she's babysitting him, and wackiness ensues. It's really funny. It's also extremely breezy. It's a little over an hour and a half, and it goes by really, really quickly. The other movie that just popped up on Netflix, and I'm almost embarrassed to say to the level that I was impressed with this, was Cult of Chucky. And we're now so many sequels in, and I'm astounded by 2 things with this franchise. One, that they've managed to continue to keep the same continuity going now for nearly 30 years, which is saying a lot in our era of where everything is rebooted to a clean slate. Like the moment you get Breathing Room. And 2, the fact that it's been able to continuously reinvent itself, because we're now like two movies in to what I would almost call Chucky Gothic, because it's like, okay, we're part of Universal Studios. We're going to start gleaming onto that aesthetic, because this new one, it's shot apparently in Winnipeg. It takes place in an insane asylum, and it is gorgeous. This is the best looking low budget movie I've seen in a long time, and it's very evocative of an old Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi feature called The Black Cat. Like the style of the way the sets look and like the starkness of it, and it's just like I was gobsmacked at how gorgeous I thought this movie was. It's got all the snow everywhere. It's just really, really weird to be saying how pretty I thought the new Chucky movie was, but I can't really state that enough. So even if you just want to watch it as background noise and turn down the volume, there's one scene where one of the characters goes into this room and it's completely white. Everything in it is completely white, and then you have Jennifer Tilly in an all red dress, and it's fucking gorgeous. And I just I would take that frame and put it up on my wall. It's so pretty. So kudos for them for a series that is now direct to Netflix at this point.
Yeah.
And still trying to have an aesthetic and actually going for it and then pulling it off to boot. So it's again, can't stress that enough. Beautiful movie. Both of them very entertaining. They're both on Netflix. Both seasonally appropriate, naturally. So check them out. I also have to plug that this coming week on Wednesday, the new issue of Halloween Man will be up on Comixology. That will be issue 16. It's part 3 of our ongoing American Nightmare storyline. So if you have some post-Trump rage that you need to work through, this will be a good issue for you to read. So check that out on Comixology on Wednesday.
Wonderful. Okay, yes. Please post that on the page when it comes out, by the way, so that people can link directly to it. That'll be awesome. Okay, Cult of Chucky. By the way, straight to Netflix. This is the salvation of movies of all budgets now. I mean, that's
I
like it
I
used to
think
be.
so.
Yeah, you could go direct to video, but it'd be hard to find your stuff. Whereas now with Netflix, cream rises, and that's pretty great. It especially with the way that Netflix will push stuff that suits you, the viewer, particular viewer. Like it just filters it up to you. I'm amazed by it. So okay, Julia, what do you got for us?
So my endorsement is not, horror related. It comes from this having watched this film, and as I said, I take it from a personal kind of position of having experienced something that was psychologically traumatizing for me, and having taken a very long time to heal from it. And part of the healing journey for me was reading this book called Healing from Hidden Abuse: A Journey Through the Stages of Recovery from Psychological Abuse, and it's by a therapist named Shannon Thomas. And it's such a great look for anybody, not only who's healing, but also who just wants to better understand psychological abuse. That's what I read that quote from about the difference between narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths. But that's not the focus of the book. Really, she just refers to kind of that whole group of people as toxic persons, and just talks about what it's like to be gaslighted and to have people just believe either believe the toxic person or just to be, like, oh, well, I'm just going to be neutral and then shun the person that has been victimized or whatever, like any number of things that happen when there's not some overt thing that you could point to, like, oh, that person raped someone or that person hit somebody or that person yelled at them in front of everybody. It's like just insidious, psychological abuse. And it's a really good book. I mean, it's a really great look at what those stages are, and also just an understanding how that can be and how maybe it's really hard to see when you're not in it. So I highly recommend it. Shannon Thomas, Healing from Hidden Abuse.
Excellent. Okay, I have two, both of them related to video. There's a book that I'm going to be endorsing, but I'll talk about it next week after we do the interview with the author. So skipping the book for a second. Two video things, one that I remembered and one that I just discovered existed this week. The first one, free on YouTube, you can watch something called An Evening with Edgar Allan Poe, and it is such a cool thing to watch sometime in the course of your October. And there's not much left, but and it is Vincent Price on a stage reciting stories and poems from Edgar Allan Poe. It was shot, I guess, for PBS back in the 70s. And it is so great because you've got Vincent Price reciting The Telltale Heart and doing a Cask of Amontillado. It is so great. And, there's nobody better to just listen to reciting Poe for you. So that was called An Evening with Edgar Allan Poe. You can get it on DVD, but it's available on YouTube. So, watch it until enough of us go watch it that YouTube takes it down, which sometimes happens. And, I think it was done for Canadian PBS, so I don't think anybody's actually enforcing it right now. There's that. And I also discovered something really cool that is on Vudu, at least, and it's also on Shudder, and it's called Dr. Terrible's House of Horrible. Dr. Terrible's House of Horrible is a 6-part miniseries from the BBC that basically every single episode is a pitch perfect parody of a different kind of classic British horror. And so there's an episode that is about the Carmilla series, basically. It's a ripoff of that. There's an episode that is a ripoff of Amicus anthologies. And it is, it literally starts out with 3 guys getting on a lift, and each of them goes, well, while we're bored, why don't we each discuss our nightmares? It is fabulous. Here are the titles of the episodes of this 6-part miniseries. Each episode is half an hour long. Like I said, you can get this on Vudu. It's not on YouTube. And Now the Fearing. That is one that is based on Vault of Horror and the other Amicus productions. Frenzy of the Tongs is a takeoff on the Fu Manchu. The Curse of the Blood of the Lizard of Doom which
So
I
it's
don't even
like
know what
it's
that's
like
about.
the Simpsons. It's like the Simpsons House of Horror then, with like the shinning or whatever.
Yes. Lesbian
That's funny.
vampire lovers of
I
lust is
I have not
is
seen this, but I'm
All
going
this,
to
Okay.
immediately go watch it.
all this is
Yes.
amazing. Like I'm
Yeah.
down. I'm totally down with this.
lesbian vampire lovers of lust is, I think, literally the finest title I've ever heard.
Okay.
Voodoo Feet of Death, and finally their season finale was Scream Satan Scream.
Nice. All right. Cool.
This sounds like
So
magic.
this stars Steve Coogan. He's the guy from The Trip, and so I it's just delightful. I can't believe this is where I think that maybe somebody's fucking with the program, basically, like that this didn't really exist previously, and they're like, oh yeah, Jason, this has been BBC put this out back in the early 2000s, and you just never noticed it until now. It's don't worry about it. It's been there all along, and I'm like, okay, sure,
Beep, beep, boop,
but.
beep. It's not part of your consciousness.
like people are retconning my own fandom, which is pretty great.
How does Sinbad's genie appear in
so-
this? I don't even know.
All right. So anyway, that is our evening talking about haunters. What is next? What do we have coming up next? I'm trying to remember
Stranger
what's
Things.
Oh yeah, Stranger
Stranger
Things.
Things. But next week's episode will be Stranger Things, season 2, parts 1 through 4 in one episode, and the following episode we'll be doing 5 through 8, and that's the plan. If you're enjoying the show, a couple things. Leave a review if you could on iTunes. It is a big deal because those reviews that people put on iTunes then get sent out to all the other ways that people find their podcasts, and it makes a huge difference. It helps in filtering and so forth. So it makes a big difference. Come to the Facebook page, like the Facebook page, share it. Share on it, and we will totally join in the conversations. We're having so much fun, and yeah, I think I'm having more fun every week now than ever before. We're really hitting our stride, amazingly enough. So everybody have a fantastic week and be excellent to one another, and we will talk to you next week.
I like the
Right.
fact
Bye,
that you learned and you didn't talk about torturing anybody.
Shush.
I may well return to that any day now.
No
once
return.
I've
Okay.
been-
No.
Don't
Night. Bye,
encourage.
everybody. Good
Don't
night.
be, don't be a rush.
Bye.
Be excellent.
Excellent. Thank you.